deep breath whenever the spirit moves you. Start your time.
According to RAINN, every minute an American is assaulted. This statistic doesn't even include other forms of violence. Today I'll be discussing what many researchers and social scientists have suggested validates this illegal and violent thought process in men beyond the college environment. This belief is known as hypermasculinity. According to the Huffington Post, hypermasculinity is the belief that in order to be a man, you must in no way resemble a woman. Being even remotely feminine strips you entirely of your masculinity. This then means that conventionally feminine traits such as tenderness, compassion, and empathy are strictly off limits. Hypermasculinity has led to dire outcomes and effects not only on men in society, but also on women. I personally know 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 women who have been sexually assaulted, and that is 5 too many. For the past 10 weeks, I have done extensive research on the topic of violence of women and discovered that one of the proven contributions to this violence is resulting from the pressures of hypermasculinity. I would like to inform you all today specifically about how hypermasculinity affects violence against women, and to do so, I'll be discussing two main components of hypermasculinity. Don't show emotions and conquer women sexually. First, let's look at how hypermasculinity demands a lack of emotions from men and the effect that has on women. Emotion is looked down upon for the male sex, and the suppression of these emotions in turn lead to violent advances on women. According to the documentary Tough Guys 2, written by Jackson Katz, not being emotional in terms of men's feelings is defined by needing to shield vulnerability and suppress feelings. Emotions are shut down and looked down upon through common phrases starting in childhood of quit being emotional and don't be a pussy. Because the socially acceptable behaviors for femininity are to be and have emotions, hypermasculinity goes to extremes to differentiate itself. Hitting the gym and getting gains has been societally placed on men as a motive that will make them better. Moreover, they can get muscles and appear more masculine. Having the image of being physically capable to hurt someone or protect someone is attached to the male stigma. In the media, emotions for men are connected to the idea of there not being room for crying and reactions in a normal way. Men in film are depicted as the violent and strong people who don't cry, but show their power by hierarchically being above weak people. In the case of this research, women. When men are not able to express emotions, violence and harassment towards women may result. Bottled up emotions could translate into sexual violence. Women are already viewed in society as being weak. If a man is given the opportunity to prove his manhood, it could be through sexual violence from holding back real feelings. Now that we have focused in on one main component of hypermasculinity, which is lack of emotion, I would like to shift the weight to men and their mandatory sexual conquests. Sexual conquests are mandatory to be considered a man. Movies often glamorize casual sex. If men within our society view these films and don't see women refusing the acts, it could be in a man's subconscious that anytime they want sex, they can get it. In media, the power of a man leads to his ability to casually sleep with a lot of girls. If he doesn't have that ability to appear masculine and strong, he may not rope in women. In the male sex, being sexually conservative and or a virgin is looked down upon. According to the Bro Code documentary by Thomas Keith, quote, "A theme of many of these shows is competition for sexual attention. Sex is the one and only goal, and one of the predominant messages served up to young women is that they should compete for men," end quote. Also, according to Julia T. Wood in Gendered Lives, the media shows men as desirable and dominant, while women are portrayed as vulnerable and sexy. The interaction with women when men are pressured by society to be sexual beings can turn into a non-consensual act between man and woman. According to RAINN, quote, "As of 1998, 2.78 million men in the U.S. have been victims of attempted or completed rape, and as of 1998, an estimated 17.7 million American women had been victims of attempted or completed rape." Okay, so here is a chart showing just how many women are affected by this, and I wasn't really focusing on college, but what I found interesting is that women 18 through 24 and not in college have a much higher rate than college women, which was I actually found surprising because you usually think that more are affected in that age group in college. But it just goes to show that if it is 18 to 24, if the perpetrators are also within that range, it sadly makes sense because boys or men of that age are still coming to terms with themselves, and because of the way they grow up with their childhood and like the way that these terms are put on them as being having to be dominant and like dominant males and having to like not be emotional, it can like really go to show like how they're going to grow up and how that is like changing just like the way they view themselves and like their own identity as they get older. So I just thought this was interesting to show that within this age category of women not in college, that there's a much higher rate of assault. Men use their hierarchical advantage to express their dominance and societal stigma upon women. They believe that because there is an expectation to have sex, that it can be given to them upon request or even against it. In closing, it must be remembered that these issues should not be taken lightly as they deeply affect a large population of men and women. By informing my audience about the effects of hypermasculinity on women and discussing the main components of hypermasculinity, I hope that you are left with the impression of how this societally constructed term has a correlation to involving women. Cases spur from the lack of emotion within men and their mandatory sexual conquest to be seen as masculine. By the end of this speech, about 6 people have been sexually assaulted.